Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thunderhawk Coaching, great to see you. I got a point I want to make today to you guys. Why you don't feel anything anymore. So, this is something I see a lot. This is something I've seen a lot with my clients. This is something I've seen a lot in myself and other people. And I feel like just by the nature of the platform we're on right now, we're on youtube.com, right? That's where this video is being posted. A lot of us are looking for something, right? There's a desire, there's a yearning, there's a boredom. But you don't feel anything anymore because you're not with any of that, okay? You're not sitting with yourself, okay? You're on this video right now because you probably want to escape how you feel, okay? Whether that's boredom is a feeling, by the way, or any other feeling that's happening. Your life might really suck right now. You might really be struggling. And I'm not going to be here to judge you and tell you that you shouldn't try and do what you can to manage that. But it comes with a lot of problems, okay? And that's some of the problems I want to outline today. If you are chronically on this website, if you are chronically on X, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, etc., you're ingesting a lot of information, right? Okay, so when I think about how to move forward, how to feel things, how to be more aligned as a human being, right? Something that really comes to my mind a lot is what is your information diet, okay? When we think about a person that eats food and eats too much food, what happens when somebody eats too much food? Somebody gains weight, problems happen, right? And speaking as somebody who's a larger guy, right? When you eat a lot of food, we all know it leads to some kind of health problems, right? And actually, that's kind of my hypothesis for why we're not feeling as much, right? Or why we're struggling to recognize it. There's this condition called alexithymia, right? So this is a subclinical condition, and I'm not a clinician, right? This is just an idea to illustrate this, but alexithymia is essentially the reduction in the ability to feel and understand emotions. Okay, struggling with reading the internal signals, and often it can kind of look like, emotions are kind of like a gradient along a line often, right? We feel these emotions along this kind of gradient. And if we are kind of in the alexithymic sphere, we will only usually feel the extremes, right? Because those are the clearest differences along those gradients, right? It's either black or white. So if you've got a lot of black and white thinking, alexithymia might be something to consider. But when you only feel extremes, it's often because you're overeating information, you're overeating emotional content, you're overeating in the mind, okay? Often we don't need more, we actually need less, okay? So when we think about being overweight from eating too much, one of the challenges, and something people recommend a lot, right, is exercise. And exercise is positive for a lot of reasons, but it's not explicitly addressing the challenge associated with the weight, right? Really, it's there's a lot of interesting research around this. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a sports coach or anything like that. I'm a mental health coach, but we've got to think about kind of what we're taking in, the calories we're taking in, right? Because they ultimately add to our nutrition, they ultimately add to who we are. You are what you eat is very true, I think. And if you sit and you doom scroll and you watch doomsday videos all day about how the world's going to explode and the economy's going to crash, or we're going to go into World War III, or some political thing happens, then that's what we're going to be. That's what we're going to think about. And when we think about that, right, when we zoom out of that, if we're constantly being bombarded with crisis, okay, if we're constantly being bombarded with the world is done. We're done. We're cooked. We're screwed. That is gonna just activate our amygdala, which is responsible for like a lot of our fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses. And we're constantly going to be in that stressed state, okay? We're constantly going to be kind of physiologically activated. So when you are stressed, when cortisol is blasting through your body, cortisol being the stress hormone, right? Our body instinctually wants to suppress all of those emotions, okay? Because emotions are not useful when you feel like your body's about to be attacked by something, right? You don't want to be crying when there's like a lion in front of you, okay? So all of this stress that we're passively amassing through social media that is pushing us in certain emotional directions, looking for engagement through provocative content, then you're gonna feel terrible, right? You're gonna feel stressed, you're gonna feel overwhelmed, you're gonna be worrying about the state of the world. And like, you know, some of those concerns are valid, right? Like, there are some challenging developments in the world right now, right? And I'm not going to go into them, but it's like important to acknowledge those, but also be really aware of like how you're being activated when you engage with this content. Is this helping you understand where the hell you are? Because ultimately, regardless of how informed you are, if your nervous system is screaming, I'm in danger, you're not going to do anything, okay? You're either going to be freezing, you're fighting, or fawning. You're not going to be productively contributing to your life, and you're not going to feel your emotions. So you're going to be like, how the hell am I going to move forward? Like, what is life? What am I doing, right? You can't understand what that is if you're constantly activated emotionally. It's just impossible to do, right? Because like the deeper, I'm going to teach you something about emotions here, guys. So emotions kind of just like float up, right, in our experience. Emotions just like kind of come up and they bubble up, okay? But they need the space to do that, okay? Like if our system is screaming danger, 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 we can't do that. Like the feelings won't bubble up. They'll be like an ice sheet over top, kind of hardening you in a way to like the pains of the world. So you might feel numb when you look at these really explicit or challenging pieces of content. And all these emotions underneath are just going to hit the ice. They're not going to come out. And then more of these like bubble emotions, and then more is going to build up underneath. More and more pressure is going to build up until there's a break, right? And then there's going to be some kind of seismic activity internally for you, right? If you have a mental health condition, work with a mental health practitioner, right? This is not medical advice, and looks very different for different mental health conditions. But if you suppress your emotions, they will have physical consequences, okay? And something I really notice in my work is if you suppress your feelings, other weird health stuff happens, okay? So if you like suppress your emotions, there are people who have had all kinds of weirdness sprout up in their literal body. Their body manifests the repressed emotions. And I think it's really important to be curious with like what's happening for you internally. So you might be in an environment where you're like, I don't feel like I'm safe to express these emotions, or I have space to express these emotions, or like, what do you mean just stop, right? I can't stop. You know, I would encourage you maybe to like try and be still and see what that's like for you. Be curious about that. Set a timer for yourself, 5 minutes, and that might sound like a lot for you. Put your phone down and just be in where you are, because that's going to actually help you figure out where you're going and what you're doing. And if you're anything like me, you might have this feeling internally that you're like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm uncomfortable. Let's go over here. I don't like this. Let's go over there. There's some kind of desire, some kind of yearning in there to do something that isn't this discomfort. So we jump from this video to this video to this video. you probably already tried to click on another video. You probably already have clicked on another video. But what we need to keep in mind here is slowing that process down. And it's gonna suck and it's gonna be uncomfortable. But if you want to like actually experience your emotions again, you kind of have to, okay? So a big part of this process is like actually like talking about them and feeling those sucky emotions. And like we can certainly talk about like what that looks like to like deal with a bit more in a more of a concrete way. But ultimately, like what I want you guys to keep in mind here is like, I don't have experience with my emotions right now, so I need experience with my emotions. And sometimes it's going to take a very long time for those emotions to come up and have you feel safe, because you probably have really good reasons for not feeling safe. And working on that takes time. Why you can't feel your emotions, you might just be a guy, right? Men typically have higher levels of alexithymia just by, some might argue, our societal conditioning. Some might argue just kind of our biology. Men typically struggle to feel our emotional signals more, right? So you might get frustrated. You might be like, I can't feel anything. What do you mean, Will? But I promise you, you just give it some time and you will make progress, okay? So you don't feel anything anymore. And I guess the question at the end here is like, is that a helpful thing? I would argue yes. But I'm going to leave it there for today. You've been wonderful. I've been Will. Thunderhawk Coaching. Good luck.